Speaking of cars, when I got in my car on Wednesday morning and began driving to church, I turned on the radio on one of my preset stations, and I heard the last 10 seconds of a song, and in my head I was like, that's Perry Como. And that song ended, and another song immediately started, and it was Elvis singing, "I'll have the..." I was like, what? Blue Christmas? November 1st? You've got to be kidding me. And I turned off the radio, and as I continued on my way to church, and I'm driving by houses with pumpkins and Halloween decorations still out on people's lawns, now because I'm a pastor, this is the way my mind goes, I started thinking about, what does this signal about our culture's approach to holidays? Halloween, which is largely about getting lots and lots of candy, and, it's job security for dentists all across the country, and, that gets promoted in our culture for weeks. And as soon as it ends, the culture starts pushing its version of Christmas. All on TV, all during the week, all of a sudden there's Christmas ads on, and kids are hugging their brand new car that they're getting for Christmas and ripping open presents and all this stuff. And the cultural version of Christmas, which is buy stuff and get stuff for yourself and for other people. And lost in the rush of these two holidays is there's another holiday in the middle. How many of you are middle children? I think you'll appreciate what I'm about to say. I hope you will. But I thought, Thanksgiving is like a middle child who is getting ignored by parents on either, because they're paying attention to kids on either side. And I think Thanksgiving gets lost because it's not about getting candy, it's not about getting stuff you don't need. It's about being thankful and grateful for all the blessings in our life. And then we celebrate it by getting up very early the next day and going out and buying tons of more stuff we don't need because we're discontented. Thanksgiving is a spiritual practice, which we also can call gratitude. And the Bible says that thanksgiving and gratitude are hugely important for contentment in our life. Our Bible book of the month for November is 1 Timothy. And all three of my sermons this month are coming right out of 1 Timothy chapter 6. And chapter 6, frankly, really challenges us as American Christians. And today we start with this call to godliness and contentment versus the love of money and the desire to be materially rich. And the latter two, the love of money and the desire to be rich, are universally praised in our culture. And yet our Bible has a far less flattering view of the love of money and the desire to be rich. Two Beatles song titles that are true when it comes to being content are "Money Can't Buy You Love" and "All You Need Is Love." And Paul, the apostle, not McCartney, had something to say about this when he was mentoring Timothy and subsequently all of us about living as a Christian. Listen to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 10. "Of course, there is great gain in godliness combined with contentment. For we brought nothing into the world so that we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. Ouch. If you want to just look down at your feet right now for a moment, just look at your feet for a moment and just know I'm probably going to step on your toes in the next 15 to 20 minutes. So I just want you to make sure they're still there. They'll be there when I'm done. Godliness is not a word we hear much anymore. How often do you hear that word or use that word in conversation? And sadly, it's not a quality we see much anymore either. And particularly among far too many of the richest and most powerful people in our nation. Godliness seems to be the farthest thing from their behavior and their minds. From Hollywood, California, to Washington, D.C., and to too many other places, men in particular, men in power, have used their authority and their influence not to serve others, not to help others in a godly way and to make their lives better. But as we continue to hear day after day, week after week, men have abused women, they've used their power to enrich themselves without any regard or concern for other people. And frankly, as Christians, we should be disgusted. It is disgraceful how greedy and lacking in decency and dignity and morality so many rich and powerful people are. Every one of us should be offended. But 1 Timothy says we should not be surprised. In fact, 1 Timothy says it's to be expected. It's to be expected because 1 Timothy says a life focused on getting rich, just to get rich, is spiritually dangerous. Now, that's not what most people think. Nor is that what many people believe or are taught. But it's what Jesus and the Bible teach and proclaim to be true. So let's dig for a few minutes into what this scripture says. So we have to start by defining a couple terms. Godliness. What is godliness? Godliness is piety or reverence toward God. It means more than just religious profession. It's more than just saying, I believe this. It's even more than godly conduct in our lives. It's about a vital relationship with God that shapes and guides and directs every other aspect of our life. It's the sum total of our virtues and duties that we have as believers that bless us, Timothy says, for the present life and also for the life to come. Contentment is freedom from anxiety and worry. And contentment arises from an inner disposition. Someone who is content is far less likely to be impacted by outward circumstances than someone who is discontented. In 1 Timothy 6, in verses 7 and 8, it reminds us, you come into the world with nothing. You leave the world with nothing. And if we have the essentials in life, like food and clothing and shelter, that should be enough. The trick is what we consider essential tends to keep growing. G.K. Chesterton wrote, there are two ways to get enough. One is to accumulate more and more, and the other is to desire less. Money is a motivator. It's a goal. It's a prize. It's a dream of many people. We all need enough money so that we can live adequately, and it's very important to understand. It's not that money is evil, it's the love of money that is evil. It's a very important distinction to hold on to. Having money, it enables us to be a source of blessing to other people. It enables us to do things like we do with a holiday fair, right? Having money enables us to be a source of blessing, to extend and support God's mission and work in the world. Money gives us freedom. It gives us power. It gives us influence. But going from money to the love of money and slipping into greed, which is arguably the most pervasive, universal human sin, is spiritually dangerous. And greed causes people to do all kinds of things. It causes us to notice and desire what we might not otherwise have paid attention to and don't need. So, for example, you could think, hey, I'm totally content with what I have. And then someone we know gets a new house. And we go, oh boy, their house is so much nicer than mine. Or they get a new car or a new phone or new furniture. And all of a sudden, the thing that we had like that, which we were perfectly fine with a week ago, now all of a sudden is inadequate. And we want something new. Where does that come from? Now, I know what I'm talking about is kind of a hard teaching for American Christians because we celebrate people who get rich and get wealthy. And we act like getting rich in and of itself is a virtue to be pursued by everybody. And Paul writes Timothy and says, you know what? Wanting to be rich is a temptation that's dangerous to our soul. And he says those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. And in the news, we learn all the time about people who sell their souls, their integrity, their good name, even their country, just to get more money. Judas did not betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He betrayed himself. That's the price he set on his own honor and his own integrity. And he sold himself and the Lord very cheaply. How many examples could we give of people whose love for money causes them to do illegal, immoral, or ungodly things? And this passage, like so many others in the Bible, is about the spiritual trap of the false security of riches and how we shouldn't put our trust in that. And as followers of Christ, we don't want money ruling our life. We want our spiritual life ruling our money. There's a big difference. We want to use money without serving money. We want to own things without treasuring them. We want to possess things without being possessed by our possessions. And whether we're rich or poor as followers of Christ, it's important for us to be capable of having or not having money or possessions without being possessed or corrupted by them. If we have money, if we're blessed with an abundance of things, we should be grateful and thankful, but we don't want to love them, trust them, or serve them. Whatever our financial situation, we're to use money and possessions in a way that honors God and encourages and blesses other people, and not merely for our own comfort or self-indulgence. The Bible teaches us that money is not merely a means of exchange. Jesus says money is like a god. It offers security. It can induce guilt. It gives freedom and power. It entices us. Money is out to gain our allegiance, our devotion, and our love. And if you don't think so, just think about how you feel just as I'm talking about it. When we let go of money, we let go of part of our security. We let go of part of ourselves. And that's scary. And that's precisely part of why we need to do it. And that's why giving to God and to others frees us from the tyranny of money. Remembering that all that we have is basically entrusted to us by the Lord for a short period of time makes it easier to give and to be generous. And that's one of the reasons why we encourage and try to teach people to tithe, to give at least 10% of what God has blessed us with back to the church for the Lord's work, because it frees us from the idolatry of money. It frees us from loving money. One of the favorite stories I told many years ago that Nathan really loved was about the two men who were shipwrecked on a remote island in the Pacific. And one guy began screaming in anguish, "We're going to die! We're going to die! There's no food! There's no water! We're going to die!" And the second man said, "Relax. I make $100,000 a month, and I tithe to my church. My pastor will find me." I would, too. I just want you to know that. But in our church, when it comes to money and finances, and this is part of what I love about our church, is that our church, we have a diverse body. And we have people at every point on the economic spectrum, from those who are very well off, to those who are struggling to make their bills, and to those of us who are coping with debt. But regardless of where we are financially, it's important that we all have a biblical view of money. That we don't love it, we don't worship it, we don't serve it. Rather, we use money for kingdom purposes. And a Christian virtue involving money that almost, I think, seems quaint today. I'm going to use another word you hear about as much in conversation as you hear the word godliness, and that is frugality. Dallas Willard, in his wonderful book, The Spirit of the Discipline, says, "In frugality, we abstain from using money or goods at our disposal in ways that merely gratify our desires or hunger for status, glamour, or luxury. The spiritually wise person has always known that frivolous consumption corrupts the soul away from trust in, worship of, and service to God, and injures our neighbors as well. In our current world, a large part of the freedom that comes from frugality is freedom from the spiritual bondage caused by financial debt. And as we all know, more and more of our neighbors are getting deeper and deeper in debt. And the issues of frugality and contentment and consumption are all connected. And being a good manager of our resources includes seeking to try to get out of debt as quickly as we can, because freedom from debt brings freedom in life. There's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with earning money, even lots of money, through our God-given gifts, our hard work, our education, our experience, our excellence, and our diligence. Like John Wesley, I want the people of my church to use all those qualities to earn as much as you possibly can, because I would rather have resources in the hands of people who have kingdom values than in the hands of people who don't. And having money enables us to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share. And we're going to talk about that more next week. But we have to remain vigilant, because Paul says being rich can also lead to trouble and cause us to wander away from the faith. Money can either help or hinder our relationship with God and with others. It all depends how we see it and how we use it. We don't want to be infected by the love of money and affluenza. It's a terrible disease to get, affluenza, which causes us to squander our resources unnecessarily on ourselves. I would much rather, as I said, have financial resources in the hands of people of faith who understand that we care about a lot more than just enriching ourselves. Think of the people in the Bible, like Abraham and Job and David and Nicodemus, and the women who provided for Jesus out of their resources so Jesus and the apostles could carry on their ministry. They all were very well off financially. In Acts, we learn of Barnabas and others who sold land and gave the proceeds to the apostles for the ministry of the church. And there are countless others through the centuries, right up to the present day, who through their generosity have provided hospitality and food and lodging and resources so that suffering could be alleviated and so that the message of the gospel could be shared. And all these people trusted God and used money and position and power for the glory of God and for the good of others. And as they did, they grew in godliness and in contentment. Whatever our financial situation, we're to use our money and possessions in ways that honor God and encourage and serve other people. In a September 1st column titled, "Does the Pursuit of Wealth Corrupt Your Soul?" Alexander Green, who's the chief investment strategist of the Oxford Club, wrote the following. He said, "After all, money matters, sure, but it doesn't buy genuine love or friendship. It won't solve your problems, end your worries, fix your marriage, make you, quote, a success, or even make you more charitable. People without money often imagine it will do these things. It won't, because money doesn't change you. It magnifies you, making it clear to everyone who you really are. You are who you are because of the choices you make, not the size of your bank account." As followers of Christ who don't want money ruling our life, we want our spiritual life ruling our money. We use money without serving it. We own without treasuring. We possess without being possessed. Stock market goes up and down. Fortune 500 companies rise and disappear. But you know you'll never get a higher return on an investment than treasure invested in heaven. The path of godliness leads to the blessing of contentment. Let's pray.